Hi everyone, this is Robin from the Persistence Growth team, and today I will be talking about a proposal that was submitted by Shade on the Persistence forum to expand XPRT liquidity. But as usual, I won't be talking about that myself, and that is why I've invited two beautiful guests, which are Mikhil from the Persistence team and Carter from Shade. Welcome guys, how are you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk about this.
Likewise, doing quite good. Very excited about this proposal and this discussion. I think Shade Protocol team is probably one of the smartest team in the space, as we all know it. So, very excited to be talking about this with Carter.
For you, Mikhil, I don't think it's necessary to introduce yourself. I mean, if people in the persistence community don't know you by now, then I don't know where they have been hiding. But maybe for the sake of it, maybe you can just share what you're doing at Persistence before I go over to Carter.
Hey everyone, I'm Mikhil and I look after the broader strategy for the Persistence Labs. So everything that we do to XRP stake Persistence, the chain itself, and other parts of the ecosystem, I look after the business and the growth strategy.
What about you, Carter? Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Carter. I consider myself the lead researcher. So all things product development, all things protocol strategy is kind of what I lead off. But we like to all be Swiss Army knives at Shade Protocol. So we wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, Carter, I don't think you need an introduction now. You're the most popular person in Cosmos these days.
That's a bold statement, but we appreciate the compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I want to dive more into the proposal, I actually wanted to start with the synergies between Persistence and Shade. Although it's the first time that I have you both here on a call with me, it's not the first time that persistence.one and Shade community are coming together. For example, you have SDK Atom pool already that exists on ShadeSwap. As well, you can use SDK Atom as a collateral to mint Silk. Carter, how would you describe the synergies between Persistence.one and Shade Protocol so far?
Yeah, I would say it's the start of a really long and bright future. One of the coolest parts about Cosmos is you have this exponential growth of more and more app chains coming into fruition, and you have IBC connecting all these ecosystems. And so there's going to be this constant need for the LST ecosystem to continue to map out to and grow as the Cosmos grows collectively. And within that story, different LSTs have different security profiles, have different liquidity strategies. And so myself personally, I'm very bullish on Persistence and the ecosystem that you guys are making there, and specifically being able to continue to onboard the LSTs from Persistence into the privacy preserving DeFi ecosystem. It's a very unique niche. There's lots of transparent DeFi out there in Cosmos, but to have this kind of like special relationship with Persistence where you can say, hey, like the traders that value privacy, the users that value privacy, there is a venue and a partner that like we're very tightly aligned with on that front. So I think we have like a unique symbiosis in that sense, just from that differentiation, and we're continuing to onboard Persistence products as we launch more of our own products, right? We have a money market on the way where people will be able to lock up their SDK Atom and borrow Bitcoin, borrow ETH against their SDK Atom. Right now, you can mint out a stable coin against your SDK Atom and go and use that stable coin anywhere in DeFi. So lots of synergies, and it continues to grow over time.
How do you feel about that, Mikhil?
I mean, obviously, I'll just echo what Carter said, right? There's a lot of users and traders who care a lot about privacy, and there are a few who do not. So I do think with Shade and the secret ecosystem in particular, it's going to grow quite a bit. And when it does start growing, a lot of users holding SDK assets, whether it's SDK Atom, SDK Osmo, or SDK DYDX, when it goes live, any of these assets, they would want to use these assets on Shade. And I think that's when things start getting exciting, especially because, like Carter mentioned, a money market on the way. Now that's a very exciting use case, right? So I do think we've worked very closely with the Shade Protocol team, and our experience has been really, really good. We've enjoyed our time working together. And I think as they keep launching more products and as we keep issuing more liquid staked assets, the synergies just keep on increasing and increasing, and we're bound to do very exciting things together. So yeah, I've very bullish, and yeah, I look forward to more of this.
That's really nice to hear. Absolutely. Now, Carter, let's talk about what we are here for. Can you explain a little bit more what this proposal is that you have submitted on the forum?
Absolutely. So about 6 months ago, we started to make a kind of a unique observation. We've noticed kind of this repeated pattern where a protocol goes to a decentralized exchange. They start, they want to have a trading pair, right? And they start, emitting their own token and kind of inflating the supply, expending a significant amount of money to extract external mercenary capital to come in liquidity provide. Like you're paying some external actor capital, and they're not necessarily super long-term aligned, right? We even call them farmers. It's kind of like an embraced practice within this world of DeFi. So we kind of said to ourselves, who are the most long-term aligned actors, more than just like a mercenary liquidity provider? It's actually the protocols themselves. So we came up with something called Protocol Liquidity Matching, where essentially two projects, they loan tokens to each other to make an LP token. You team up to make a liquidity token where both protocols only own their side of the LP token. And the beautiful part about that is you can just conjure up, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of liquidity for a great trading experience without needing to spend any emissions on external actors. It's just two protocols teaming up. We think that this is like truly the future of kind of bootstrapping pools. And it allows protocols to build liquidity rails, take advantage of IBC, take advantage of network effects in a way that I think is really, really mutually beneficial.
Mikhil, what are your thoughts about that, or how does the persistence community react to this proposal?
I mean, I can't speak for the persistence community. I can speak for myself. So I think it's definitely a very good way to build liquidity, right? Like Carter mentioned, it's every time you have to build liquidity for any asset, it's just you paying out incentives to mercenary liquidity providers who may not stick into the pool after, let's say, the incentives have reduced or have been stopped, right? So what you want is sufficient liquidity for trading to happen at any given point in time, with or without incentives, or with or without additional liquidity providers being a part of the pool. So given that context, I think the proposal creates a very unique also situation where XPRT can now be traded on a privacy preserving DEX, right, which is not a use case that we have right now. So I think the fact that you can take XPRT into an ecosystem which preserves privacy, I think it's super exciting. My personal view, obviously, we've talked about, certain community members have also talked about splitting this liquidity onto Dexter and onto ShadeSwap. My personal view is the merit that we get from having all of this proposed liquidity going on to ShadeSwap rather than splitting that on two DEXs is much more than, I mean, personally, it seems like if we just let 300K worth of liquidity, we split it out into two parts, there's not enough liquidity, right? You want the pool to be sufficiently liquid for trades of larger sizes to also go through without lots of slippage. So I would advocate for all of this liquidity going on to ShadeSwap in this moment. But if the community feels that, okay, no, we need some liquidity, then it may make sense to have smaller percentage of allocation allocated towards the Dexter pool. But I think this, like, if we think about things from a broader perspective and not just, like, okay, where would TVL exist? Because TVL is it's a vanity metric. People love looking at TVL, but I think what matters more is volumes and users and usage of liquidity, right? So I believe this liquidity would be used far more efficiently on ShadeSwap than on Dexter in this moment. And that's why I would advocate for that over having some liquidity on Dexter.
Yeah, and how do you feel about that, Carter? Because I think the things that Mikhil just mentioned were some concerns in the comments to share the liquidity with Dexter instead of all going to Shade.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's pros and cons to both sides, right? If you kind of split up the liquidity, you're kind of the IBC rails and kind of the arbitrage that's going to be happening between those pools. You're going to be kind of incentivizing kind of that ecosystem a little bit more, that kind of cross-chain arbitrage. If you focus on just one pool, you're really more focused on giving the traders the best possible experience. So I think you could go either way. And I think like the concerns about like, hey, like how can our ecosystem with persistence best benefit from that? I think those comments are like super sharp. That means you have a really good community that has their head on their shoulders that's thinking about this properly. I tend to think that the advantages of having it all in one place means you get to tap into the network effects of ShadeSwap in a more like stronger and distinct fashion versus splitting the liquidity. But at least from our end, we're open to splitting liquidity, and then as we gather data on volume and liquidity, I think it'll become apparent where to kind of then pivot strategy. At Shade Protocol, we say we'd prefer to do a harsh, fast experiment, gather data, and then pivot quick versus like kind of preemptively trying to like overthink the problem when there's a lot of unknowns, right? We don't necessarily know how like splitting liquidity will perform versus one pool. We have our assumptions, but you can start with one, gather data, and then pivot and iterate. And that's totally acceptable as long as you're working with teams that are nimble and capable of change, which not all teams are, but the persistence team definitely is.
Well, I'm sure this tackles a lot of concerns that were in the comments. So thank you for that. Now, what are the next steps for this proposal? When will it go live on chain?
So for us, we always feel like best practice is to let forum posts marinate a little bit. So I think now that forum post has been up there for a solid at least a week, and at least I've had the chance to interact with the persistence community members and some of their questions, which have been really, really good, really effective questions. So I think at this point, it's now appropriate to enter into the actual on-chain stage. So I think this Thursday, I will put up kind of the official, this is what's actually going to go on chain, and we'll get that up on chain either this Thursday or Friday. And then we'll see kind of what the will of the community is to see if there's an appetite for it. Yeah, super excited to take those next steps with the persistence community.
All right, perfect. I don't know, are there any final thoughts on this from you, Mikhil?
No, I think we've covered everything, and I'm super excited for this partnership. I think it definitely creates more synergies between Shade and persistence, and I look forward to that. And I'm very excited about the money market that we'll see on Shade as well. So looking forward to that. And yeah.
I'll add one other piece of alpha too, because I think it's also an important part of the story. We're almost on public testnet with this, but we have a Trader Joe style liquidity order book that's also going to be coming to ShadeSwap. So we'll be kind of exiting the constant product paradigm and entering into a significantly more trading experience, at least on the volatile assets. We already have a very efficient trading curve for L1 to LSTs, right? So like that's Atom to STK Atom. We already have a very efficient trading experience. Same for stable swaps, but kind of our volatile pools, we still have that basic evenly distributed liquidity, which is not as efficient as it could be. So once liquidity order book comes, which is still probably 3 months out of testing, iterating, audits, all that fun stuff, it will make these types of deals even more efficient if like even a slightly concentrated liquidity experience is chosen. And Osmosis has proven that concentrated liquidity is very efficient. The trade-off is like UI, UX for users in terms of that friction and that placement and that risk management. But just know that we're not going to be stuck in the Stone Age with like only having constant product pool. We do have a liquidity order book coming as well.
Yeah, I think it's evident that the Trader Joe model works best for volatile assets. So I think this makes a lot of sense, and it also validates what you just said, right? You do some experiments, you run some experiments, and you pivot if required. So that's good to see as well, in practice.
Well, I think we are all looking forward to that. And the only thing left for me is just to thank you guys for freeing up some time to come here and talk about this proposal. And I really hope I can speak to you soon again. Thank you, guys.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Carter.